So, welcome on the show, former rhythmic gymnast and BBC Sport presenter Gabby Logan. How are you? When and why did you decide to start gymnast? So, what was your first job after uni to chase that dream of being a TV presenter? What is your most favorite thing that you've presented? What advice would you give me for breaking into the broadcasting industry and getting my first presenting job?
Bringing you a kid-friendly radio show every Saturday afternoon on YouTube. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock.
Hello and welcome to our first Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to the 10th episode special of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and happy new year and welcome to the New Year's special of the Brit Kids show. Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Hello and welcome to the 40th episode of the Brit Kids show with me, Ethan. Coming up on today's show, we celebrate 40 episodes of the show and my interview with former gymnast and BBC Sport presenter Gabby Logan. So the first thing I want to say, happy 40 episodes. Hopefully you liked that intro from all the different episodes so far, and I just can't believe we've made it to 40 episodes so far, which is insane. Really, it just feels like yesterday when I started this show, and it's been an incredible journey since then, especially in the last 10 episodes, because we've improved and grown the show so much. When episode 30 was published, I was on 62 subscribers. Now we're on 121, which is absolutely incredible. In just under 5 months, we have grown 59 subscribers in the last 10 episodes. And I just want to say thank you for that. Also, in the last 10 episodes, I think I've had my first semi-viral video, which was episode 30, which is with the Marsh family, which is now over 3,000 views. Which, to think about that many people in one room is just unbelievable, literally. And then another thing, the show has just changed a lot in the last 10 episodes. The show itself has changed. Before episode 30, we were doing panels of young people talking about current topics, which I do need to do more, but I can't fit it in these days. And also, I was just interviewing my friends about their life and COVID, which was great originally and during lockdown, but I already interviewed all my friends again and again, so it was just getting a little bit repetitive, and I wanted a change up. And now I've been able to do that in the last 10 episodes. I have had Claudia Winkleman, yes, Claudia Winkleman, on the show, which is I would have never have thought when I started this podcast that we would get I would get to interview a celebrity on this show, and I've done that, and I've done it again today, and I did it with the Chief Constable as well, which is just unbelievable to me and incredible. But let's put the end to this little bit. I want to say I hope it just gets better from here, with more amazing guests as well as getting the younger people opinions out there, and a lot more fun. Here's to another 10, 20, 30 or even 40 episodes more. So now I've been quite busy these past 2 weeks. So the Wednesday after the last episode, I went out in Barney with my friends. Then on Thursday I went on holiday to the Isle of Wight, which was a very, very long drive. Which was really nice to see my nan for a couple of days, which was lovely. They had a swimming pool, so I went in. They had a swim pool, so I went in for a swim, and yeah, we did a lot of fun stuff. Then I came back on Tuesday. I went to see my granddad on Thursday. I'm always bumping this wall, aren't I? This space is not big enough for me. So I went to see my granddad on Thursday. Yeah, I've just realised my light wasn't turned on when I'm recording. Sorry that, but now it's turned on. It looks better now. Let's continue. I've been working on this show and also my other project, which is my coffee morning for UNICEF's in aid of UNICEF's Give the World a Shot, which is aiming to deliver 2 billion COVID-19 vaccines all over the world to the people who need it. So if you do live in the Teesdale area, pop along to Mickleton Village Hall on Saturday the 28th of August. That is next Saturday, from 10:30 to 1 o'clock. All the info is just right here. It is £2.50 to come in, which includes a lovely sweet treat and a drink. And there is also a raffle as well. One more thing, if you do want to help out on the day, because we need all the help we can get, or you want to donate a prize for the raffle we're doing, or if you want to bake a sweet treat, for it, email me at mickletoncoffeemorning@gmail.com, and it would be much appreciated. So if you want to support me and UNICEF deliver 2 billion COVID vaccines, and live in the Teesdale area, pop along. For more info, check the link in the description to the Coffee Mornings Facebook page, and give it a like while you're down there. So now it is time for my interview with BBC Sport presenter Gabby Logan. So welcome on the show, former rhythmic gymnast and BBC Sport presenter Gabby Logan. How are you doing today?
I'm really well, Ethan. How are you? Thank you so much for asking me on the show.
Yeah, I'm doing great. So before we get started, I do want to say thank you for coming on today, just a day after the Olympics has ended, that you've been presenting, obviously. So let's go right back to the start. So people might not know this, but before you were a presenter, you were a rhythmic gymnast, and you even presented Wales in the 1990 Commonwealth Games. So
I did,
when and why did you decide to start gymnastics?
Well, when I was a little girl, I did lots of different sports, and so I enjoyed swimming, and I enjoyed athletics and tennis. That was a big passion of mine, and gymnastics as well. And then when we moved around quite a lot, because my dad was a footballer, and when we came back to England after living in Canada for a while, I was really, really keen on tennis, and I wanted to be a tennis player. But when I moved back to Leeds, there were no tennis courts indoor, and it was winter time, so there was nowhere for me to play tennis. So my sister was more keen on gymnastics, so she found a gymnastics club, and so I kind of just went along with her, really, just to kind of see if I could keep doing sport I enjoyed until I found a tennis club, and then I ended up being quite good at rhythmic gymnastics, and the kind of rest is history, really. It just kind of evolved, and I'm always a big fan of kids doing lots of different sports and not specializing too early, because sometimes, you know, you might find your sport a different way. It's not always the sport you think, and actually your own personal physical attributes change a lot, obviously, as you're growing up. So there aren't many sports that I think, you know, you can. Obviously, footballers get signed up at 6 and 7 years old, which seems a shame, really, because there might be other sports that those boys and girls could do, and they might not make it as a footballer. So I'm always keen to, when parents ask me about their kids in sport, I always say try and do as much as you possibly can, really.
So as you said, your dad was a professional footballer. So did he influence you to start like competing in gymnastics?
I think my dad's influence was more about the hard work that it takes to be a top class sports person. I could see the amount of hours and dedication, the training, the dealing with disappointment. So I suppose I had a very good role model in the house for that. He didn't really, because he came from a very, very poor background, and he didn't have, growing up, they didn't have any money, and sport for him was a way out of that life and into a profession. And so he kind of couldn't understand, first of all, why I was so devoting so many hours to gymnastics when it wasn't going to be a job. So and that's the case for a lot of Olympic sport. A lot of Olympic sport is not going to be very well rewarded financially. Of course, if you do well at it, you might end up becoming something else from it. But yeah, he was a bit bemused at first, I think, as to you know, why wasn't I playing golf or tennis or doing something where I could earn a living? And so I think perhaps my passion for Olympic sport stems from those years where I just understood how people do something for its own sake rather than for the sake of it becoming something else. And then once me and my sister started to achieve more and win competitions, you know, he was very supportive, always very supportive. But yeah, I think his example was the most powerful thing we had.
So at what age did you start competing in gymnastics internationally?
About 13, I think I did Junior Europeans, which was in
Wow.
Athens. So yeah, so I went
Very young.
yeah, and that's the thing about gymnastics. Traditionally, it has been a very young sport. And nowadays, I mean, at the Olympics just happened in Tokyo, there was an athlete who won a medal for the floor from Italy called Vanessa Ferrari, who was 30, and that's really unusual to see an athlete at that age. Yeah, so so it's changed a lot from when I was younger, and obviously I was a rhythmic gymnast, but yeah, so I went to Athens as 13-year-old, which was so exciting because obviously I was missing school. And I was, and then from then on, did lots more internationals.
Yeah. So how much did you train when you were a professional gymnast, and with schoolwork on top of that as well?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really a professional in the sense, I suppose my attitude was professional, the amount of training I was doing, but of course it wasn't professional as opposed in a job. So I was training at its peak before the Commonwealth Games. I was doing my A levels, and I was training probably about 30 to 35 hours a week, and that was squeezed around my A levels. So I would do a couple of mornings a week before school. I'd get up and I'd go to the gym to do all my ballet and conditioning, so that I didn't have to do that after school. And then after school, I'd go back to the gym and do all the technical parts of the sport. And then a couple of afternoons, I would leave school early. I wouldn't miss any lessons because I was doing A levels, but instead of hanging around in the library or whatever, I'd go off and do my cardio part of training, which would be swimming. And then I'd go to the gym after that. And so it was pretty much my whole life wrapped around my studies. And I had really great friends who were very supportive, and you know, they still invited me out with them, but I just wasn't able to go very often.
Yeah. So while I was researching you for this interview, I found your first TV appearance as age 18 years old. When you were the Leeds Rose at the 1990 yeah, the Rose Tralee competition, where you explained your injury that you had just after you got back from the 1990 Commonwealth Games. So if you don't mind explaining what the industry that was.
Injury, yeah.
Injury.
Yeah, I had a back problem, which it resulted eventually in me kind of having to give the sport up because it was just too much pain in my back to carry on. And it basically was a kind of structural thing for my body. So if you imagine the bottom of your back where your coccyx are, they kind of slide in and out of the socket. And mine was a little bit catching sciatica kind of pain, which was going down my legs and in my back. And because I did so much back bending, I was exacerbating it all the time. So then it would become inflamed, and it would seize, and I'd take painkillers, and then I'd take anti-inflammatories, and I was 17, nearly 18, and I was very much of the mind that I didn't want to ruin my body, because obviously I had a life after gymnastics. So it was a very hard decision to stop doing gymnastics, and it left a massive hole in my life, as you can imagine, with the amount of time that I was training. So yeah, it was an unfortunate injury that my doctor or the specialist explained to me that there are only two things that would have brought that on. One was doing rhythmic gymnastics, and the other was painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And as that wasn't going to be my job, I was okay with that regard. But yeah, it's something that I've had to manage a bit over the years. Occasionally I get a little flare up, but I look after myself, so I'm okay now.
So do you miss competing in sporting events?
I've kind of got over it now, but when I first gave up, I was desperately sad about it, because it's such a buzz to train towards something and work hard and then go and compete, and the feeling you get of relief afterwards, and how much you enjoy competing. I liked everything about it, really. So yeah, it was very hard to find the joy in other things that I was doing in my life. And I was doing my A levels, and I wanted to go to university, and I remember thinking, gosh, I'm never going to find anything that that gives me as much satisfaction. And I think that's a feeling a lot of sports people have when they finish. And it doesn't matter what your career is. I had a lot of what I suppose were regrets, that I felt like I was finishing too soon and I hadn't been to an Olympics. So I know just how disappointing it is for sports people sometimes when they end a career and they haven't done what they wanted to do. And that's understandable. And I think in life, we have to kind of deal with disappointment. So it's not to say that we shouldn't do something in case we get disappointed. I think you have to be realistic about things and understand that you might face disappointment doing something, and we can't shield ourselves from that. And it was a great learning curve for me to go through that disappointment and then find what I wanted to do in life. And I will never, ever regret having done the gymnastics, because it was such a brilliant experience, but also it gave me a lot of qualities and skills that I still use now in my life.
And now, do you like presenting and just watching the events now, or do you like when you actually competed in the events?
It really is not the same. It's really second best, but it is a joy to be at these major events. And I've covered some of the biggest events, whether it's Olympic Games, World Cups, European Championships, Rugby World Cups, Six Nations, Women's World Cups. So I've done some amazing global sporting events. I've traveled the world. I've seen lots of different cultures and got an understanding of the way other people live around the world. And I'm enormously kind of thankful for those experiences, and also inspired by what I do, and seeing incredible people doing amazing things and pushing themselves really does fill me with kind of great joy and inspiration, because I think we take that into other areas of our life. It's it's been an absolutely thrilling kind of experience to be that close to people and meet so many of my heroes. I was watching a program last night about Monte Carlo, and the Monte Carlo Yacht Club came into shot, and I said to my husband, "Oh, I had lunch with Novak Djokovic there." And he just started laughing, and he said, "I didn't even know you'd been out to lunch with Novak Djokovic." And so, I said, "Actually, I think his dad was there as well." So it was very, it was a reminder of some of the amazing kind of experiences that I've had in my career to kind of sit down and think about all of those. I've been very, very lucky.
So after you stopped gymnastics, you took a gap year to relax, and you went on.
I wouldn't say I was relaxing, Ethan. I had 5 jobs.
Oh wow.
Yeah, go on.
And then you went on to study at Durham University for law, is that right?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And so why did you want to study law?
I think I was from a family where nobody had been to university before. Everybody was in quite working class, blue collar jobs, and I wanted to go to university. And I think probably there was a bit of me that wanted to do something that sounded serious, you know, and also potentially had a job at the end of it if I wanted to go into the law. Actually, a lot of lawyers don't do law degrees, they do conversions as well, you know, so you could do an economics degree and become a lawyer. You don't have to do a law degree, but it just makes it quicker. And also I was interested in justice. I was interested in global law and the effects. I did really interesting courses, things to do with public international law and human rights law. And so I was very interested in politics as well. And I started off doing politics, but dropped that and just did pure law. But I knew that even when I went to university that I wanted to work in broadcasting, because when I was 15, I'd gone on Blue Peter, and I just loved the TV studio and the whole live element of it. And so I'd had this kind of eureka moment where I realized that's what I really want to do. So, but how do you do that? Where do you go? Well, how do you start? You know, this was before multi-platform broadcasting existed, before social media existed, before having a phone on your, you know, on your person existed. So, so I had to kind of start from the very, very bottom and try and kind of work my way into getting experience. And so during my degree at Durham, I worked for a local radio station for 3 years. The whole time that I was I was in Durham, I was working in Newcastle. It's about 15 miles up the road. So so while I loved my degree and enjoyed the 3 years I had, I also really kind of almost did an apprenticeship, I think, in broadcasting.
Yeah, I did see your routine at Blue Peter as well. I found that as well. So do you think like presenting TV it was the next best thing for you after gymnastics?
I suppose there's an element of performance in it, which I enjoy. You know, there's an element of being kind of adrenaline gets going and you feel quite kind of nervous. Things can go wrong. And I like that element of it. I really love live TV more than pre-recorded TV. And although there are some pre-recorded shows that are fun to do, I really enjoy the live element. So I suppose TV gave me that outlet of performance. I was talking, I mean, when I first started off in radio, I wasn't doing sport particularly, and there weren't many women doing sport, so I didn't really see that as a possibility. So then when I was able to work in sports broadcasting, I got that kind of thrill of being around sport as well as doing the kind of broadcasting side of what I do.
So what was your first job after uni to chase that dream of being a TV presenter?
I got offered the breakfast show at the radio station, commercial radio station. So that was my first proper big job. And it was a big job, you know, doing the breakfast show is the flagship show on the station. It's the one that most people listen to. Yeah. And while I was doing that job, they could see that I was really interested in sport. So they said to me, why don't you do interviews on a Saturday at St. James's Park for the football? Because you really love football. And I came from a footballing family. My dad was a footballer, and I followed Newcastle United. So I started doing these interviews on a Saturday and really enjoyed that. And then Sky Sports were looking to recruit more women. So they asked me to go down to do a screen test. So that was my first proper TV job. I had done another job in Newcastle for the local TV station, interviewing anybody really. It was a strand called Gabbing with Gabby, and anybody from the Northeast who was famous. So I did Anton Deck and people like Steve Cram and some of the footballers, Les Ferdinand, who played for Newcastle, lots of the local kind of pop stars and things. And then when I went to Sky, obviously it was to do live TV. So that was my first live TV job.
So how nervous did you get in that first presenting job, and do you still get nervous now?
I was very nervous at the start, and can't really kind of recall, you know, how quickly I got used to it, but probably quite quickly, because it became quite, I was doing 2 shows a night, so it was a great experience. And yeah, I still get nervous now, especially big shows like Sports Personality of the Year, and you know, when you start off kind of doing the beginning of any tournament or any championship, you know, the first programs, you get a little bit of nerves, but then just a little bit, it's good, I think.
Yeah. And do you have like a routine before you go about to go live?
I think it's all about prep, really, making sure I'm completely prepped, and there's a kind of there's always last minute prep to do, and then going into makeup and hair and coming through that feeling kind of like you're ready, you know, you kind of like you've got all the elements have ticked, and yeah, just giving myself a kind of, you know, a little internal pep talk, right? Okay, you know, make this clear and make it and be concise, and don't you know, don't over flower your language, and you know, just kind of those things that you remember to do, and keeping across everything that's going on. So it's just being prepared really, and making sure you don't forget important bits of equipment like your earpiece and your clothes. Because believe it or not, once I set off to do a live football match in Newcastle, it was Christmas time, and I got about 4 junctions down the motorway and realised I'd left my clothes in my house. So yeah.
So after you presented Sky Sport, you moved to ITV and presented things like Champions League, the Rugby World Cup, and many more. Before you moved to BBC way back in December of 2006, before I was even born. And you've been there ever since, presenting a whole range of things, from the FA Cup to the Olympics to sport relief to the World Cup to athletics. And now you are, is this right? You're now BBC Sport's main presenter for athletics.
That's right. Yeah, I've been doing the athletics since 2013.
Yeah. So you presented a whole range of different sporting events, from football to athletics, from London to Tokyo. But what is your most favourite thing that you've presented?
I think whenever I do something like the Olympics or the World Cups, I really enjoy that intensity of that period of work where you're working every day on a project like the Olympics, or when I done England jobs, the World Cups, I used to be the England reporter, so I'd be in a camp with the same people. I think 2012 probably personified that was the best working experience. I did the highlight show, which was about 10 o'clock at night, and it was just an amazing experience to do, because London was such a successful games and it really united the country, and so that was really, really enjoyable.
And what is your least favorite thing that you've presented?
Sometimes when it gets a bit cold, like last winter, it's not that I don't enjoy the match or the event, but there was one match last year in Liverpool, and it was a great match. It was Liverpool Spurs. It was a brilliant match. They were the top of the league. I was doing it for Amazon. And I was so cold that I started not being able to construct sentences in my head. It was freezing. In fact, Peter Crouch was one of our pundits, and I looked at him at one point and his lips had gone blue, and I thought we were going to have to resuscitate him. So that's the kind of challenge of the job sometimes, when, especially COVID, because we weren't allowed to go back into studios because of COVID. So normally we'd have some of the match would be in a studio and we'd be kept warmer. But we were outside for about 6 hours. It was about -2,
wow.
with I think about a -15 wind chill factor coming in through the stadium.
Oh.
And I bought myself a heated vest which has batteries, and the batteries ran out. I didn't realize they only lasted 3 hours. So that was when it really hit me. So yeah, it's that's the worst part of kind of the job, being cold. And then the other side of it is being too hot. I remember doing the Euros in 2004 in Portugal, and it was about 40 degrees, and you've got kind of sweat pouring off you, and you feel absolutely awful and clammy and disgusting. And so dealing with weather is probably the biggest challenge, I think.
So what is your most favorite sport to present? Is it the athletics or is it a different sport?
I don't feel like it's really, I can't really say like one thing, because I love the variety of what I do. So when I do the Six Nations, I think this is the best. I love the Six Nations, it's the most fun I have. And then I'll do the World Cup, and I really love the football, it's brilliant. And then I'll do something like the Olympics, and I just love the athletics so much. So I loved the World Championships athletics in London in 2017, because it had that real feeling of London Olympics. It was fantastic. And I loved doing the last World Cup the World Cup in Russia. Well, yeah, that was the last one. That was just brilliant. Discovering Russia was amazing. I went all over Russia and loved that. So, and Australia in 2003, the Rugby World Cup, which is nearly 20 years ago now. I was just newly married. My husband was playing in the World Cup. He was playing for Scotland, and I had 7 weeks in Australia, and that was just a delight, because when do you get paid to go and hang out in Australia for 7 weeks? So yeah, that was pretty cool.
So when we went into lockdown and most of the sporting events were cancelled, was it nice to spend more time with your family and not having to travel as much?
I did really enjoy, Ethan, not traveling for a while. I enjoyed not rushing to airports constantly, and packing bags, and that was definitely a big highlight. And weekends, where I'm normally away for at least part of the weekend, having time with the kids and my husband was really lovely. And I knew that wouldn't be forever, so I really tried to embrace it, because I was back doing football by the June. So, you know, so the April and May were really, really special just to decompress and breathe a little bit. I mean, I was sad for my kids that they weren't able to continue their sports because I would have had time to go watch them. But obviously, of course, they weren't doing it because that's why I was free.
And did you get bored during lockdown at any point or not?
No, I didn't really. I had loads to do. I started writing a book, which I'm still kind of, I finished it, but still, well, kind of finished it. So I was doing a lot of writing and I was doing a lot of sorting out things that I wanted to do for ages and enjoying going on lots of walks. And I'm very lucky. I live in a really beautiful part of the world. And so, yeah, I never really got bored.
Oh, so we'll jump forward a little bit now. So you just finished presenting the athletics at the Olympics for the BBC. So this Olympics has mean that you've not been able to go to Japan because of COVID. So how has it been? Because haven't you just been sitting in front of a green screen while you've been presenting?
Yeah, it's not quite the same as it was supposed to be. Let's put it that way. So we were supposed to be inside the Olympic Stadium doing the athletics, and instead we're in a green box in Manchester. So I tried to find the positives, right? So one of the positives was I've been to Japan already. So at least I wasn't missing out on that experience because a lot of my colleagues hadn't. So I was very lucky. So I also could envisage where people were in Tokyo because I've been to Tokyo. So that was one thing that was a positive. The other positive was, well, I didn't need to go to Tokyo and leave the family for a longer period of time. I was in Manchester. So if anybody needed me, I was close by. I was on the same time zone. That was another positive. And also what transpired was I was living 4 minutes from work. So I could walk to work 4 minutes every day. I didn't need to go through security. I didn't need to have a COVID test on the way to work. You know, all the things that would have happened if I was in Japan. So I was trying to find the positives from that. On the flip side, I was in a green box, and that's quite hard every day because if you imagine it is totally green, nothing else around you. So it's really hard to focus because you can't see what people at home can see. So I couldn't just say, you know, over here is this or over there is that, because I don't know where anything is. All I can see is green, and it's quite dehydrating. It's really weird because you don't, don't drink very much when you're on air anyway, in case you need to go to the toilet. So, but somehow the green just made me feel quite dizzy almost. I'd get off air and I'd feel absolutely exhausted by it, completely shattered. And maybe that's, you know, just getting older, but I don't know. But and also focusing for 4 hours is quite exhausting. But yeah, the green screen was the downside of the whole Olympics. The plus point was that, you know, we brought, I think, a really inspirational, wonderful Olympics to life and gave people wall-to-wall coverage, and that is a major feat in these times, I think. So hopefully never again. Hopefully we'll be back in Paris in 3 years' time and we'll be sitting in some iconic locations, and the Olympic sport will really, I think, just come. And also Paris is the same time zone as us, pretty much an hour's difference.
Yeah.
So everything will be in peak time, which will be brilliant.
Yeah, so actually, perfect lead on to my next question. Did you need to really wake up like really early to present because obviously the time zone difference?
Well, I was quite lucky because the evening session of the athletics started about 10:30 in the morning UK time. So I was quite lucky. I was getting about 5:30, 6 o'clock. That's not too bad. Some of my colleagues obviously were working through the night, and then I had to do a few Sundays because the presenter who does Sundays, he doesn't work on Sundays. And so I filled in for him, and Sunday breakfast, I had to be at work at 3 a.m. So my alarm went off at 2:30 a.m. Yeah. So those days, yeah, it's really hard to get to sleep when you're only getting up one day a week like that. I think if I was doing it every day, you get into a rhythm of doing it.
Yeah.
So I found that really hard and tiring. But yeah, as I say, a lot of my colleagues were on much more difficult schedules than me.
Yeah. So before COVID, with your job, you must be traveling around the world a lot. So is it hard on your family because you're not there as much?
Yeah. When I was, I have made decisions in my career to not do things because of that, you know, so there's some things that I've been asked to do that I've said no, because I try and make sure that my husband and I have always, when the kids were little, always wanted one of us to be at home because he also had things to travel to. So, and we did that quite successfully, and they got used to me being away for a chunk of time. And my daughter got quite wobbly about it in 2014 when I went to do the Football World Cup. So she would have been 9 then. And that was the one time I remember her being really sad about me going, and she was worried about me. And she told me afterwards she just was worried about the plane, and she was worried. I think it was an age where she just probably had a lot more anxiety about the world. But apart from that, they've generally, of course, they miss you, and before you go, they get a bit upset. And then when you're away, they don't really notice it. And then when you come back, they just love you being back. So usually it works out okay. And now they're 16, so they don't really care. And so actually it'll be interesting the next few years, kind of my working life, I guess I'll make decisions in a different way, really, because of course I'm still their mummy, and I've still got lots to do for them in their lives and still organize everything they do and everything, but they've got their own lives, and this time next year they'll be driving themselves. So my role in terms of their day-to-day organization becomes less and less. But yeah, it's like any working mum or dad, you have considerations to make about what you do for your kids. And so I always made sure there was a good team. The worst was the first time I ever had to go away was when they were 3. I went to the Olympics in Beijing, and that was the hardest, I think, for me, not for them, because they thought when I came back, the day after I got back, I said I'd take them to Legoland, which is near Windsor. And we lived in Richmond in London. And when you go there, you have to pass Twickenham Rugby Stadium. And as we drove past it, my son, who was 3 at the time, said, "Oh, there's the Bird's Nest Stadium where you've been, mummy, for the last 3 weeks." I said, "No, that's in China. This is obviously 2 miles from our house." And I had this horrible feeling that he thought I was only down the road and I hadn't bothered coming home for 3 weeks. So at least in his mind, I was just down the road. So yeah.
Yeah. So what is your favorite place that you've visited through presenting?
I love all the European cities that you do the Six Nations, and I love Rome. I used to love going to Rome every year for the Six Nations. We don't do those matches anymore. We do the home games for Edinburgh, another great city, but not exactly exotic, and Paris, which I've been to many, many times. But I think I've been very lucky, as I mentioned before, the Rugby World Cup in 2003, and I've been to New Zealand for work as well, and I've been to China, and that's quite an amazing place to travel for work. And Brazil, I've been to Manaus in the middle of the rainforest. So they're kind of places that I wouldn't have got to probably were it not for my job. I went to San Salvador in Brazil, which is an incredible place, and I've been to lots of corners of the world that travel probably wouldn't have taken me. But I have to say, during the World Cup in 2018 in Russia, I really enjoyed being surprised by Russia. It wasn't what I was expecting, and I came home with very different view of Russia.
Yeah. So in the 2020 New Year's Honours, you were awarded an MBE. And how does that feel that you're an MBE now? And how was the ceremony like?
Well, it was such a wonderful surprise. I just did not have any idea, So when I got told, I was just completely bowled over. And sadly, because of COVID, my ceremony got cancelled last June, and it hasn't been reinstated yet. So, so I haven't been and had my my ceremony, if that's the right word. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope it comes up again soon, and I can go and celebrate with my children and my husband, because I think it's a real honour to be. I mean, I was given it for my work in promoting women's sport and charity, and that's really great because I've always been a champion of women's sport, which has become a lot more accessible in the last 10 years. And to be a small part of that journey has been a real privilege.
What, so do you not have the actual medal now yet?
No,
or not?
I haven't got the medal yet. And I've got a certificate, which the Queen signed. So I've had that framed, so they can't take it away. I don't really use it though yet, because I feel a bit like I don't want to jinx it. So I don't put it on my Twitter account or anything like that. I kind of want to wait, because I notice a lot of people who've got MBs put it after their name, but I don't do that. So I want to feel like I've actually been there and got it before I do that. I don't want to jinx it, Ethan.
Yeah. And this is my final question. What advice would you give me for breaking into the broadcasting industry and getting my first presenting job?
I think you have, haven't you? You're there. I mean, it's just keep doing all the stuff that you're doing now. And when you're interviewing, as you are, you clearly do loads of research, and that's really important, because when you interview somebody, you're going to learn more about them when you talk to them, but it's great going in with information about them. So I think I know it's really not very helpful, but keep on keeping on. Send your interviews to people, send them off to heads of controllers of stations and controllers of radio stations, and let them know what you're doing. And I'm pretty sure that in a couple of years' time, I might turn around and find you in the office.
Thank you. Again, thank you for coming on the show today. And also, while you're here, if there's any of your celebrity friends that would love to come on the show, your agent's got my details. Just taking my opportunities while they come.
Absolutely, Ethan. Strike while the iron's hot. Well, if anybody asks me whether or not it's worth doing, I will say absolutely, because I think you interviewed my friend Claudia Winkleman as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I came, because Claudia's agent said to me that she'd had a nice time. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Again, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much, Ethan. And you take care.
Okay,
Bye to your mum.
Bye.
Bye.
So hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Gabby Logan. It was a really good one. But I do want to say a massive thank you to Gabby for taking time out of her day to talk to me. If you do want to see more of Gabby Logan, all of the links to her social media are down in the description down below. Sadly, that is all we have time for in today's episode. We will be back on the 4th of September on audio and the 5th of September on video, with an interesting interview, the weekly watch list, and head-to-head the best guess. Please share this video with your friends and family. Like, comment, listen to last week's episode if you haven't already. Listen to this show until the end. Email me, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe, because we are trying to get to 200 subscribers. Or follow, favorite, or review, or whatever your listening platform does. It really does help out. In the meantime, if you have any suggestions to make the show better, or about the Brit Kids gaming show, or if you want to talk on the show, or if you have a TV show or film that you'd like to nominate for the watch list, or if you want the chance to compete in head-to-head the best guess, comment below, message me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or email me at thebritkidshow@gmail.com. So that is all we have time for this week. We'll be back on the 4th of September on audio and the 5th of September on video at the same time. But for now, thank you for 40 episodes and goodbye.
Bringing you a kid-friendly radio show. Every Saturday afternoon on YouTube. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock. Broadcasting live.